Matt, thank you so much for being here on the You Make It Happen podcast. I really appreciate you taking the time today. I'm so excited for both of our listeners to hear about your relationship coaching and how you got started on your own healing path. But before I get too far down the rabbit holes, like my listeners know that I do with the ADHD, can you tell us a little bit about your background and how you got started in this field?
Yeah, absolutely. I feel very lucky. I grew up in a household with parents who were very loving and caring, and I just thought that was like everyone went through that, and I never had that experience. And I started to date, and I was like older, and just like, didn't quite find the right person until eventually I met someone. I'm like, you know what? I could spend the rest of my life with this person, and I thought I love her,
Excellent.
and she seems to like me too. And so we dated, we got married, and I thought, okay, the hard part's over. Like we made that commitment. We're in love. It's all easy street from here. And I just that's when I think I learned the reality, which is even though we loved each other, even though we cared about each other, even though we could talk to each other and be open and vulnerable, like we still just didn't really know how to understand each other on in this like deep way so that we could talk about the things that scared us
Yeah.
and make big decisions together. We like even having kids was something that we knew we were mostly on the same page. Like I wanted kids and she thought she was okay with that. But it was something that after we got married, we're like, it had been a year. We had our new home, we had new jobs, we moved across the country. We were like, okay, this is our honeymoon period. And we were really struggling. We were like passing each other in the halls of our new house, almost like strangers. It was so painful to see each other and to talk to each other that we didn't. And that was really the eye-opening experience to me where I realized love isn't enough. It really takes intentional effort to be able to connect with each other, to be able to work together and understand each other and support each other in the ways that we both needed it. And so we had been learning about nonviolent communication. And that was, I don't know if that's something that you're familiar with or
Yeah.
the
Did you
audience
read
is
that book,
familiar.
The Art of Nonviolent Communication?
Yeah, we read a book. We actually, when we met my partner and I met in New York, and that was like one of our early dates was to go to a workshop.
I love
And
that.
yeah, and so that was like this exciting thing. But it also felt, oh, this is like a nice thing to have. Like it's cute, it's fun, maybe not essential. But when we, a few years later, had got married, had this house, we're really struggling, that was when I like pulled out my book, pulled out my notes, and I'm like, okay, I got to take this seriously.
Yeah.
And so I was sharing what I learned with my friends, with my family, and not only was it helping us, but it was helping everyone I shared it with. And so it just became a bigger part of our lives, what I about doing. I just could see how I was helping people. And so that ended up becoming eventually over time my coaching practice.
I love that. I love that. So is that what you would say was a catalyst for starting you down the path of the coaching practice, which, as we know, involves a lot of trauma healing and work on yourself, even to become a coach?
Absolutely. Yeah. I think everything is this journey of like healing and then the things that I think you or that I have feel like I've healed myself and taught myself that's been so instrumental, important for me. Those are the things that I want to be able to share with other people.
Yeah, absolutely. And like I said, I know it takes a lot of work to get where you're at today. What are some of the things that you did on your healing path, working on yourself to get to the point where you could be a coach and be certified and do all of that?
That is a really good question. There have been a number of things and steps along the way that I've done. And I think one thing that really stood out is even though we were making progress in our relationship, at one point we decided, okay, we're ready to have kids.
Mhm.
And my partner actually got me a book. It's Conscious Parenting by Dr. Shefali.
Mhm.
And I don't know if you're familiar with that. I have not read it. I have not read it,
Oh,
but I read the first two chapters.
okay.
And actually, I'm not even sure if I still have the book, but I read those first couple of chapters and in it, she said, when you have a child and you want to teach this child all the things that you have in your head that you want them to learn and be capable of doing,
Right.
you cannot just say, do this.
Oh, yeah. No, that
Yeah,
doesn't work.
that doesn't work. And the way you teach a child is to do it, embody it yourself,
Yep.
and then they learn from your example.
Yep.
And so
I recorded an episode to that effect, which it hasn't
the
been released, but will have been released by the time our episode airs. which is to the effect of children don't do what you tell them to do or what you say is right. They do what you do. They do who you are. They become who you are. Yeah.
Absolutely. And when I read that, I remember I closed the book. I swore because I thought parenting was just going to be, oh yeah, you just say all the stuff that you know you're supposed to do, and then they'll do it, and
Right.
then boom,
Right. You just taught them to
happy
be a good
life.
person. It'll work
Yeah.
great. It doesn't work.
Yes. Yeah, I've definitely learned that since our child was born
Right.
and is growing up now. But that was the first realization that if I wanted to pass along these things that were so important to me, like the ability to not be afraid,
Yeah.
or at least to be able to take action for myself, even when I'm afraid, even when I'm uncomfortable. That's something I desperately wanted my future child, my child to be able to do. And so I realized that's something that if I want to pass it along, I need to learn how to do it myself.
Yep.
And so that was really the wake up call where I think finally admitted to myself that there were a lot of things that I wanted to do, but I didn't feel capable of doing them.
Yeah. Which is really brave.
And yeah, yeah. And I've since learned, I think, that this is not something you like conquer
Yeah.
and then you're done. You're like, oh, I don't have
No.
any, I have no more fear after this. No, it's a constant challenge, but also the more you do it, at least for me, I feel like I've gained awareness of so much more that I've been afraid of or I'm nervous and worried about. And to have that awareness, though, has allowed me to choose.
Yes.
Do I want to pursue this or do I want to pursue something different? And I'm not feeling like I'm controlled by my fears and my emotions. I actually feel like I have a choice. So it has been an empowering experience, definitely a challenging one, but it is something that I knew I wanted to be able to pass along to my daughter. And I knew I wanted to be someone who understood my relationship, was not afraid to be hurt. That has been a huge revelation, I would say, for myself as well.
Yeah.
And being willing to be like recognizing, acknowledging, accepting the fact that I will be hurt has been a huge thing for me. And yeah, just the more and more I learn in my own relationship, that's then becomes something I am like, okay, this is becoming, I want this to be a part of my practice that I teach other people as well, because I see the changes it makes in my life and other people's lives, and it's profound.
It is. It absolutely is. And like you said, you can be raised in a secure, loving household and have two parents that full-heartedly love you. And it is absolutely relevant because it can give you a secure attachment style and it gives you a great base and a healthy place to start, which is, it seems like the exception, like you were saying, like it's not necessarily the rule. Since once you get in the dating pool, you're like, whoa, there's not a lot of secure people in here. They're few and far between in the dating pool, which I talked about in another episode prior to this. As of this date, hasn't been released, but will by the time this one comes out. But anyway, it's demonstrative of the fact that every child goes through childhood trauma. You may not go through big T trauma, which is the trauma that people think of when they think of trauma, assaults, or even psychological abuse can be big T trauma for a child. It depends on how your brain and body perceives the event and is overwhelmed at the time, et cetera. I'm not going to get into the clinical definition, but every child goes through some variation or measure of trauma. Like simply ignoring your child's emotional needs in a moment is considered trauma. And even the most secure, loving, wholehearted, healthy, securely attached themselves parents can only do so much, right? Every child is going to have their moments of feeling unseen, unheard, not understood. And maybe it's not predominant when you have secure parents, but it will happen. So it's just a matter of, is there work to do for absolutely everybody? Yes. Is everybody doing the work? No. And that is a choice for a variety of reasons, right? Some people have personality disorder, some people can't do the work. And in some cultures, mental health help is just not acceptable for whatever reason, or it's not accessible, or it's not culturally allowed, or whatever. So I think that's great that you recognized, oh, yeah, I had a really secure upbringing. I had a great set of parents, and there's still work to be done because, whoa, I got married and I was like having this experience with my wife, and whoa, wait a minute. How do we navigate this? And it's so great that you had those tools and you can look back and say, oh, let's take this art of nonviolent communication course together. And now that things are difficult, what else can we do? And then look into it. So that's fantastic. So it sounds like there's been maybe some more helpful things specifically, like what written works or authors, movies, music, podcasts, yoga, exercise, meditation, what of any of that has been helpful for you?
Definitely the works of Marshall Rosenberg, who created nonviolent communication. I would say that those are like foundational to how I want to see the world and relationships, and how I teach others. The thing that also that's been coming up more recently is, and this maybe sounds a little bit odd, but my partner and I actually run a parenting meetup here where we live. And so we have a bunch of parents, and
Love that.
yeah, that's a big thing that we're really getting into. I feel like I learned so much. It's awesome. And at first we would be like, someone would share like, oh, here's some challenges I'm going through. And then everyone would be like, I don't know, maybe this is what I would do. And sometimes it was like, okay, maybe these suggestions were felt like effective and useful. And other times we're like, maybe there's another way of handling that. So we actually started reading a book, which is, I feel it's a fantastic book. It's actually called Good Inside by Dr. Becky Kennedy.
Okay.
And it's actually a parenting book, but she actually writes it. So we've been reading it and sharing it, but she actually writes in like the first couple chapters. This is a parenting book, but it's really a relationship book.
Oh, okay. Tell me.
And absolutely case. And so she doesn't come out and say nonviolent communication, but her work is based on her clinical practice, her own research, but so much of it overlaps with nonviolent communication. It's about not just not first of all, having this core belief that your child is good inside, that all people, have these parts of themselves that we can connect to and understand. Maybe the surface way they express it, it's okay, maybe we don't agree with it, but we don't have to agree with someone to be able to understand them and accept them as a person.
Right.
And so applying that same thing to a child, your child, then allows you to recognize that there's a difference between their outer behavior and their inner self. And so even if they throw tantrums, yell, throw things,
They do.
there's as they do, there is an inner self for them that
Yes.
wants love, needs care, needs to be seen. And so when you understand that kind of totality of them, it all makes so much more sense why they're acting the way they do. And it also helps, I think, for me anyway, connect with my child and say, man, of course she would be scared in that situation. Like she's 3 feet tall and everything's scary. Everything's new to her. Like I would be scared in that situation. And it just allows me to have so much more compassion and empathy for her, which gives me, it's almost like a superpower because I feel like it gives me also more patience, more understanding, and more just desire to connect and support her.
Yes. It gives you so much more patience and empathy when you can think of things in the child's perspective and from adult relationships perspective as well. You can think of somebody's situation and be like, oh, what you're describing to me is shame. Oh, you're feeling shame. Oh, yeah, I've been there because we're all human, right? We've all been through shame spirals and felt shame, even if we didn't have the verbal language or emotional language. Verbal language, that didn't make any sense. Even if we didn't have the emotional language to label it at the time, like I remember me in high school was just a shame spiral for most of high school. And I look back and I'm like, I wish I'd had the language, the emotional language to label because that is statistically proven to help when you can identify what you're feeling and then what you're feeling in your body, et cetera, et cetera. But even just labeling is statistically proven to help and get you back in your prefrontal cortex, back into the logical, rational, reasonable thinking mind out of the sympathetic fight or flight state or hypervigilance or whatever upset state you're in, which is the sympathetic nervous system state. Yeah, yeah, that is absolutely doing the work, especially as far as kids are concerned. Have you ever read the book How to Talk So Kids Will Listen and How to Listen So Kids Will Talk?
I haven't. I have heard of it though, but
It's really good.
yeah.
Really, I think it's one of the best books on parenting I've ever read, and it was so straightforward, simple, to the point, and obvious to the point where you don't think about it unless you're in your position where you've done all this work and you're like, "Oh, I guess it is scary if you're only 3 feet tall. That would be scary to you. That giant tree it looks like it could kill you if it fell over, and it could kill me if it fell over, but particularly from 3 feet tall, that looks scary," or whatever is scaring the kid. But it's just more of the same validation of when a kid comes to you, I'm tired, daddy." And you're like, often parents will say, without thinking about it, "You're not tired," which is invalidating the child's perception. It's making them question themselves. It's invalidating their experience. It's telling them that their emotions and their perception is not valid. And it's okay. That's what makes them question, oh, am I not tired? Like they can't trust their own feelings or their intuition. And then it's a slippery slope to all kinds of questioning other things or just flat out denying how they feel about things, right?
Yeah, it's so important to be able to validate and recognize and accept that people are going through feelings, wanting, needing things that you in that moment might not, share. But like just being able to accept it is such a huge thing. And it's interesting you bring that up. We're talking about kids, but I'm also hear it from parents as well, where if one partner is super kind and patient and understanding with their child, but then when their partner says something or says, I need to do this, whatever, and you're like, you're a grown adult. You should know better. You should be able to do that on your own. And there's still this form of invalidating.
Dating,
It
yeah,
says yeah. So it's really interesting how that plays out at any age. Really, there's always a reason and you can come up to invalidate someone.
exactly. And I know it has to do with pre-programming. I know it has to do with that person's parent-child dynamic and their childhood experiences and their core narrative of what internally is driving them. And if they haven't done inner child work or therapy or any of the things, then that's going to be what's driving them and causing them, for the most part. Obviously, there's a host of factors here. But if your partner is speaking to your kid in a way that's, oh, honey, oh, you don't feel good? Oh, does your tummy hurt? And then the adult, my tummy hurts. You're grown. Go get a Pepsid. Why are you telling me? Because I wanted comfort, I wanted co-regulation, I wanted support from my partner. Like, why do you think I'm telling you? I'm not telling you to be dismissed, and I'm telling you to be invalidated. I'm certainly not telling you to be put down, belittled, or otherwise made fun of. That's what are the four horsemen of the apocalypse, I believe, in relationships? It's
Oh yeah,
defensiveness, stonewalling, contempt, and I know stonewalling is really bad. Defensiveness, stonewalling, contempt, and criticism. Is that it?
that sounds right. Yeah,
I think that's right. I'm like, "Oh, I'm just going off memory. So
yeah.
proud of myself."
Nice,
But it's
yes.
like the
Well
Gottman's
done.
research,
Yeah,
which
yeah.
incidentally, they're in Washington or they were located. I don't know if they are anymore, but they were originally in Washington. They did a love lab research thing at University of Washington. Anyway, I just think it's fascinating how quick we will jump to one of the four horsemen of the apocalypse of like relationship detriment. How do they predict relationships are going to end with our partner? Even for somebody who has the wherewithal and insight to do it for their child, right? And I'm like, what do you think that child's gonna remember? Are they gonna remember that you validated them and made them feel good? Yeah, maybe for a second, but are they also gonna remember that you invalidated their dad or their mom? That actually who you were was not the person that they received. Because
Mm,
they would, if they see it, if they notice it, if they hear it, and even if they pick up on it, they don't even need to see it, notice it, or hear it to pick up on the energy of
yeah,
the contempt. But if you have contempt for your partner, and whether you demonstrate that to your child or not, or you think you're demonstrating to your child or not, I can almost promise you your child picks up on it.
yeah. I'm sure that's true. Yeah, they pick up on everything.
Right, they pick up on
Yeah,
everything.
yeah.
They pick up on everything. I mean, just like humans do. Let's say you walk into a room and you don't say anything and you have a neutral expression, and your wife is like, "What happened? Are you okay?" And you're like, "How did you know?" And you're like, "Because I can feel the energy. Like your
Yeah,
expression is neutral. You just walked in, you didn't say a word, but I can feel the shift."
yeah. And I think the situation we're describing here, where it's like you're able to be kind and supportive, understanding with the child, but then you're invalidating and pushing back on your partner's needs
Eh,
and their feelings, and that happens. And I think it happens regardless of how much work you've done in a way,
yeah.
because and like you said, it's like we these are the patterns that we pick up as children, and they're lifelong. We're going to have them for the rest of our lives.
Yes, thank you.
The
Can you just say that again? Can you just say that again?
Yeah,
Thank you.
we will have these challenges for the rest of our lives.
Yes,
Yeah.
we will. Yes, we will. And the difference is how we learn to respond to it and creating new neural pathways that say, oh, I don't want to respond like that anymore.
Yes,
Thank
absolutely. I really do, yeah, want to try to redefine what the human experience is supposed to be like for people, because I think there's this misconception that we conquer something, we understand it, and then it's gone.
Well, yeah,
Yeah.
solved, problem solved.
Yeah.
Especially as US citizens, people are looking for the quick fix. Okay, yeah, I need childhood therapy, but I only have 8 weeks. Is that cool? No, it takes 8 years to deprogram. And that's if you're doing the work on a regular basis. That 8 years is, I'm just making that up. But yeah, it takes a lot of work and years of repetition and roughly 3,000 times doing something different in your brain, like thinking about something in a different way or catching yourself roughly 3,000 times to reprogram a neural pathway or make a new neural pathway. I'm like,
And
it's
yes,
not overnight.
yes. And even I think even when you reprogram it, it doesn't eliminate that instinctive response because
Uh,
it's just in there. And so what I really try to work with in my coaching and just in my own life, this is what I do, is to develop that connection with myself so that when I do start reacting in a way where I'm like getting upset, I'm getting worked up, I'm starting to invalidate instinctively, I want to be able to tap into that and say, oh my God, what's going on here?
yeah,
Am I feeling
notice.
yeah, just noticing. Am I feeling overwhelmed? Am I feeling like scared that like someone isn't listening to me, that I'm not being heard? What's going on? And the moment I'm able to tap into that, the reactivity starts to like decrease.
Yeah.
Starting to get that self-awareness and then to get that choice that comes back. And so that's really what I really, if I think if people take nothing from this conversation, I really hope they will understand that the goal of all of this work isn't to get rid of all of these challenges in your life
Yeah.
because like they're there and like life is endlessly challenging. And
Yes.
it is to develop the self-awareness and the tools so that they don't control you
Yes. And that you have a choice.
and you have a choice. Yes.
Yes. Oh my gosh. Thank you. Thank you. I mean, I know people hear it from me, and sometimes I wonder if the listeners are like, I wonder if she's full of it. No, my therapist said she's okay, but it just reiterates what I've been preaching on the podcast incessantly, which is it takes a lot of work and a lot of repetition, and then it doesn't solve it. If you came in as an anxious person, you will still have some measure of anxiety. It's just a matter of getting more control over anxiety. It's just a matter of recognizing when you're starting to ramp up, when you're starting to feel anxious, when you're noticing those things happen. The more you notice, the more you get back into your prefrontal cortex, the more you have logical, reasonable control over how you react, what you say, what you do, or even if you just can take a minute.
Yeah. And there's I think you could even say that there's a limit to how much you can really control
Yeah.
that experience. I know like when my daughter gets really upset, like I've started to notice her shake like this.
Yeah.
And it's
So
just yeah, it's like her hands and it's like the feelings are so intense. It's like her body can't contain it.
yes.
And even as adults, that doesn't really go away. We learn new tools and ways to cope, but we still experience the same emotions. And sometimes they're just really intense when we are going through hard times. And especially if we aren't able to get relief in some way, when like just you're busy, all these terrible things are happening and you're feeling overwhelmed, it's like that emotion is just going to keep building and building. And it could overwhelm your own ability to deal with it and cope with it.
Absolutely.
And when that happens, that's really also a point I really try to make with people and myself is that happens. It just happens. It's life. It is normal and it's healthy. Like it has to happen.
Yeah.
The unhealthy part of it is just like trapping it so that it doesn't come out. But
Yes.
then it just
Bingo.
builds and builds. And it's going
Yes.
to come out eventually. It's just, is it going to come out in some like violent way or in a way where you have some choice, not necessarily control, but like some choice on how you're going to release that. And then we get back to that choice again. You get to that choice. Okay, what am I
Exactly.
doing next?
Exactly. Yeah, I should have been more clear with that. And you just put it comprehensively and perfectly, which is we can, yes, we can have control when we get back to that choice, when we get back to the rational, reasonable thinking part, which you're absolutely right. There are plenty of times where our emotion mind is overwhelmed. We are not capable of being in the rational, reasonable thinking logic brain. It's just not accessible. In that moment, you're in sympathetic, or maybe you're even in dorsal, shut down, completely disassociated. But more often than not, in sympathetic, when we're emotionally overwhelmed, when our nervous system is just flooded and we cannot
Yeah,
do anything, we can't regulate, we can't think straight. We're just so upset for whatever reason that our little bodies want to shake, which is actually really good for you. I think it was the Peter Levine books that illustrated the fact that the shaking is such a good central nervous system release and it helps regulate. And so just look at that, the intuitiveness of a 4-year-old child, right? She doesn't logically know why she's shaking her fists and her whole body is like shaking because she's so upset. Oh my gosh, the world is ending because I don't get this toy. And if we did that more as adults and had the wherewithal to know, oh, I'm so angry, I need to physically shake or punch the couch cushions or something and release the cortisol, the adrenaline, the
Hmm.
chemicals that are coursing through your body when you're emotionally overwhelmed. It's magnificent to watch it in a child because children do it so intuitively. They don't think about the fact that they're healthily processing their emotions in a physical way. Let's
Yeah.
hope they're not hitting who's around them. And then if
Yeah.
they do, we teach them that's not okay by society standards. And as much as you want to hit something, here's a pillow, right? But it's magical to watch with a child. And there's some video, and it was a couple years ago that went viral on social media. And it was a dad, he must have been in his 20s or 30s, that was just literally holding space for his toddler to have a meltdown.
Mm.
And she was, like, kicking and screaming and crying, and she was a toddler, and so it's hard to convey to a toddler, "No hitting, no kicking. Good luck with that. You're just gonna hold space and make sure she doesn't injure herself or anybody else," right? And he was just outstretched arms and literally holding space for her in the physical realm, as well as emotionally, for her to just melt down. And eventually, after she melted down, she came and crawled onto his lap for comfort and solace, and as toddlers often do. And it was just such a poignant illustration of physically processing the emotions in her body, going from one end of the cycle of the emotion to the other, like completing the cycle, which we as adults are not as good about
Yeah.
because we were taught that's something that a child does, or that's not socially acceptable, or whatever. Or we're not even taught to do it, like to release the physical cycle of emotion. Or you're in a social situation where you're in a meeting or whatever, like a physical meeting, not Zoom where you can turn your camera off and flip people off. That's super helpful. Like, or turn the mic off and scream, I hate you, and various expletives. But if you're sitting in a meeting across from somebody and your coworker just said something awful, or your boss, made you feel ashamed, or whatever, and they can't make you feel anything, but like you had a moment of shame or frustration and you're just livid and you just got to sit there and you just got to sit there. Like you can't complete the stress cycle in that moment. But as soon as you can, get up and move and go to the bathroom if that's your only choice. Hey, I need to run to the restroom. If that's your only option, you can't get out and go for a quick walk or go scream at something or do something because you're not in a socially appropriate environment. Go to the bathroom, punch the air, mouth some swear words so you don't scare people in other stalls, and hopefully get some of it like out of your physical body, right?
Yeah, I think what you said is so important, so key, just recognizing that there has to be some expression of this emotion, of these feelings, so that you are able to get that release, so you are able to process it to a degree. I work with both men and women. And like with men, I tend to see there's like this shutdown
Yeah.
response. And then also it's okay. Anger is often a socially acceptable form of expression for men. And so they can raise their voice, they can yell, they can throw things, hit things. And for I've noticed that for women and like mothers, I think in particular, that's not allowed. They feel like they are not allowed to even have that emotion, to feel overwhelmed, to feel angry, to feel upset. This is my child, this is my family. I don't want to upset them. I don't want to worry them. I have to worry about their needs and how they feel. And I want to be a good mother and a good wife and a good partner. And so I'm just going to pretend that those feelings, the things I need, they don't exist.
The caregiver syndrome, that I'm
Yeah.
gonna bottle my needs in place of yours and my
Yeah.
partners and my family's. Yep.
Yeah, and in so many cases, like you said, these are things we see in our household growing up. We see our parents do it. We see our family members and friends do it, and we think we don't even. It's not even a choice. It is unconsciously how we're doing it. And so much of I think it is so easy. I think to go through life, and I don't want to say this in this critical way. Oh my God, they're screwing up. No, it is just so easy to go through life. I think reacting to life without really being aware of why we're making choices.
Absolutely. Absolutely.
Because we are just so deeply programmed with how we grew up, like our experiences, that it doesn't even feel like we have choices. It just feels like I'm so mad that I'm going to hit something, or I'm going to bottle it up until I yell and scream and break a TV.
Yes.
And it's, oh my gosh, I'm so sorry. Like I just have a temper. It's just the way things are. And not really recognizing, okay, I'm making choices, even if those choices aren't like conscious.
Yeah. Exactly. Exactly. Thank you. All right. I know you and I could talk forever. I'm going to try to get to a couple of these questions and then we might have to do a part two. Who knows?
Sounds good to me.
How do you feel travel has helped you in your healing process?
I do feel fortunate to have traveled to a number of places. And I think the thing that has really helped with that is to just see how differently people live.
Yeah.
I spent some time in Japan. My partner's family is from India, so I was able to travel there and to just see how different life is, the change of the speed, the way they talk to each other. In India in particular, it's so chaotic. And so it made me, I think, feel like I get a peek into like her brain a little bit or her psyche a little bit. It's okay. This is how people experience life. Feeling like this is normal. And so just my interpretation or expectation for what I think other people should act like,
Yeah.
man, like it really has nothing to do with their experiences. And so that I feel like that has really opened up my eyes to and break down some of my expectations for what I expect from other people.
I love that. Okay. Can you give our listeners an example of what a coaching experience could look like working with you?
Yeah, absolutely. So I work virtually with people for 90 sessions, and I generally have I guess you could call it a curriculum where we're
Okay.
building over time certain skills. Like in the very beginning, the first couple of sessions, it's really about reconnecting with your own inner self, reconnecting with your own feelings, your own needs. And one of the things I really like to do in that first session is also really connect. And like the way I feel like I help people connect to their needs is to, especially in the relationship, is to have people imagine, what do you want your relationship to look like in 5 years?
Ooh, I like that. Yes.
And when I ask that question, it's often very difficult for people to answer because they will be like, oh, I guess we should talk a little bit more. Or I wish maybe we didn't fight quite so much. Or just like a little, like the same relationship, but slightly different. And I'm like, I want you to imagine anything you can. And I'll even say, wave a magic wand. You can change literally anything about your relationship, what changes. And then that's when, okay, I start lighting up and they're like, okay, I want to start traveling. I want to have more adventure where we're going to places I've never been. We're going as a family. We're cooking dinners and meals together. We're laughing. We're smiling. We're having fun. That's when I think so much of the richness of life comes out. And once you start connecting with that, you can realize, okay, these are the things that are so important to you that are not being met to you in you right now. Your need for adventure, your need for belonging maybe and care and connection. And so it's once you are able to label it, then it becomes something that you can work toward.
Yes.
And instead of it being like, and I think when I say that, everyone's, oh yeah, okay, sure, we can travel to India or another country. And yeah, I guess if we save up, we can do it in 3 years. I'm like, no, what can you do today to
Right.
give you some of that need for adventure? And obviously, it's not going to be maybe like an international trip. Most of us can't do that. But what's the smallest thing you can do today or tomorrow? And maybe it's you just go to a water park. You go, or you just go to the park and play flag football. Maybe that's something that works for you. But the key is that you are asking yourself, "Okay, this is important to me. What can I do to do that for myself?"
Right.
And then that means you are intentionally creating that reality. And so that's one of my favorite things to do. And it's one of the first sessions I do with people.
I love that. That sounds amazing. And it sounds like you get some resistance with that, right? With people who are like, oh, yeah, maybe we could have sexual relations more often or whatever. And it's okay, think bigger. And I love that you use the magic wand tool because if you could wave a magic wand and have whatever you wanted in a perfect relationship for you, ideally, which we know nothing is perfect, but what would that look like for you? And then you see the people that are
Yeah.
giving their, oh, okay. Let's travel to Dubai. Yeah, let's do some amazing stuff. Let's go see the world. Let's And then simpler, let's learn how to love each other better. Let's communicate more. Let's express more. I want to learn how to be more vulnerable. And I don't know how because I'm avoidant and I was raised that emotions are bad and I was punished for having big emotions as a child, things like that.
Yeah, absolutely. And I think what comes up for a lot of people is I just want life to feel easier. I want
Yeah.
my relationship to feel easier. And so often, like we make it harder for ourselves. And it just requires having that awareness, like, why does it feel hard? And then we can start digging into it. You can start that healing that then
Yeah.
allows you to make intentional choices in your life that create this magic wand vision of what your life and relationship can be.
Yes, I love that. Ah, okay. I could talk to you for hours. So I'm going to get into the quick quiz question round and hopefully we'll find some time to do a part two.
Sounds great.
Okay. What piece of art, movie, show, or any creative work was incredibly influential for you and why?
So the thing that, man, has always come up ever since I was a kid is this painting called Heart of the Andes by Frederick Edwin Church.
Okay.
And it's just, I think I don't know why I stumbled upon it, but it's always brought up this sense of mystery and adventure and the unknown. And it's always called to my soul for some reason.
I love that. I love that. I have so many answers to this question. I actually answered them recently on a listener request. They're like, we're going to need you to answer those questions, Missy. And I was like, those questions are designed for me, but I will answer them because I can see the appeal of listeners wanting to hear what are your answers to that. You ask everybody these same questions. What
Yeah.
about you? I'm like, okay.
What was your answer for this first one?
Oh god, I couldn't narrow it down to just one. I was like, "Oh, y'all know listening to this pod if you've listened to every episode, you know there's reading recommendations in almost every episode, and it's not just books. There's also shows, there's also artwork that I didn't even get to. The list is long and distinguished, and so it's not a short answer for me.
I
But
understand.
I also enjoy answering it. There's artwork that inspires me and moves me. There's this poem, and I can't remember the name of the poem. It's High Mountain or something by somebody. I can't remember. I'll have to look it up. I'll look it up and I'll reference it in another episode of the podcast. But there's a poem that really speaks to me. That's I don't care how much money you make or what you do for a living. I care what you value. I care have you sat in shame. I care have you looked within and been introspective and things like that. It was a really powerful poem.
That sounds wonderful. I'd love to hear that too. I'll love to see it
I
when
will look it up and send it to you. I will put it in the
awesome.
show notes because I will find it right after we're done.
Great.
What do you do to decompress?
I love to try to get some movement in. Lately, I just really enjoy tennis. That's been really helpful for me.
Love it. Great sport. I used to play that as a kid. Now I play pickleball because I'm older and I have more fun doing it too. It's not just physically easier on my joints, but I have more fun doing it. So
I've been injured a lot, so maybe I should look into
pickleball is
pickleball.
fantastic. It's half the size of a tennis court. And so there's running in pickleball, but not as much. And if you play tennis, you'll be instantly good at pickleball.
Okay, I'm not that good at tennis, but I like running. Yeah.
Even if you just know how to play
Yeah.
tennis, you
Yeah.
walk in with an advantage in pickleball.
Okay.
What's the last self-improvement or trauma book or show you read or saw and highly recommend?
Okay. I'm actually gonna reference the Good Inside by Dr. Becky Kennedy. I
I
highly
love it.
recommend that one.
Yes, and I will put that in the show notes as well. What movie or book are you currently recommending to anybody who will listen?
Okay, so there's like no educational benefit to this book, but like
Okay.
pure fiction. It's called Murder at Spindle Manor by Morgan Stang.
Okay.
It's just like it's a fiction, gothic, steampunk, detective, horror movie, mystery movie. Yeah, it's fantastic. Nothing
That
else like it.
that sounds awesome. I
Nice.
also love sometimes I watch trash TV. We all have our moments. I'm not listening to nothing but self-improvement podcasts and trauma healing podcasts and books and education all the time. Sometimes I need a break, and it's healthy to recognize when your brain needs a break from that. Take a break.
Are you saying you're a human being?
I'm a human being. I watch some fiction. I read some fiction. I listen to some fiction. I'll watch some trash TV sometimes. My friend texted me, "What are you doing tonight?" And I'm like, "I'm watching trash TV and eating nachos. What are you doing?"
Love it. Yeah.
Okay. What is at the top of your travel bucket list or wish list?
I've been going to hot places lately, so I would love somewhere cold. So Iceland or Scotland.
Ugh, good choices. Both of them good choices. I love
Have you been?
Iceland.
Have you been to both?
I have been to both.
Nice.
Yes. I
Yes.
love Iceland. It's probably my favorite country to travel to that doesn't contain my family because it's utterly gorgeous. I have family in
Okay.
Sweden, so it's hard to compare them with Sweden.
Okay.
What is the best travel story you've ever heard or your best travel story?
It's not a far travel story, but after I graduated from college, I went with my friend up to Lassen National Park in California. We drove up there
Mhm.
and we actually climbed to the top of Lassen Peak. It's not super high, but I was exhausted. I was completely out of shape. And so I knew I could not walk down. And so on the way up, my friend was like, maybe we can try, and I don't know how to say it. It's like glissading or glissading. Have you heard of that before?
I have
It's,
not.
it's basically sliding down on your butt
Oh,
on snow. And we tried
sounds
it.
like a recipe for disaster.
It really was because we practiced on the way up and I could not do it. And so finally we got to the top of it's like more than 10,000 feet in the air. It was deep. And usually people do this with gear and like an axe or something. I had nothing.
Okay.
But I'm like, yeah, I'm going to go down. I knew it was a bad sign when we were near the peak. We're getting ready to go down together next to each other. And I knew you should have known it was a bad sign when there was a ring of people watching us.
Oh, no. Oh, no.
I slid down, immediately went backward. So I went head first down half the slope, fell off to the side, had to go back and do it again. Rocks, boulders everywhere. It was not a good choice, but survived. So I'm still here today. It was very exciting.
I'm glad you survived.
Yeah,
It sounds funny if you don't get like horribly injured.
exactly. I think we got to the bottom. We looked up and we're like, that was probably not a good decision.
That sounds like some of the travel stories that I have. That was not my best life choice ever, but here we are.
Good story. Oh, good story.
Exactly. Makes for a good story.
Mm.
What's your most useful travel purchase or items?
Yeah, this is just the fundamentals. Big water bottle,
Love
giant
it.
water bottle. Yeah.
Yes, I bring a water bottle every trip I take. What is for dinner tonight? Tonight, the foodie in me has to know.
Okay, we've actually been eating quinoa patties a lot.
Ooh.
My partner is vegetarian, and they're so delicious. They're actually like meaty. It's vegetarian, but it's like super meaty. Yeah, it's
What makes it
fantastic.
meaty? What's in there that makes it meaty?
God, I'm trying to remember. It takes a while to make, so we actually get help. We hire someone to help us make them, and it's a lot of quinoa. God, what else is in there? I'm blanking on it. I used
That's
to make
okay.
them, but yeah, I'll send you the recipe. Yeah, you
Yes,
can
please
see it.
do. I would love that. I
Okay.
always love a new recipe adventure. I'm a fairly decent cook. I've been graced with fairly good cooking skills, self-developed and self-taught. My mother was a terrible cook, and my dad cooked things that Uncle Buck would frown at. So
Well done, well done. Yeah, cooking, such a fantastic skill to have.
I completely agree, and I thoroughly enjoy my own cooking more than anything, and that's what matters most. But
Yeah, that's awesome.
yeah, I think so too. I do thoroughly enjoy my own cooking. But I've gotten some gratification, if you will, from like friends and neighbors and my kids who are like, "Can you please cook this?" And I'm like, "Yes," because I'm so flattered that you love it.
Yeah. Yeah, that's
Okay.
great. Love it. I love anything that you can be grateful for. Love it. Yeah,
I
celebrating things. Yeah.
wholeheartedly agree. Couldn't agree more. What song would be your theme song if you had to pick one?
Yeah, I thought about this a lot. I will go with The Longest Time by Billy Joel.
What advice would you give for someone struggling with not being able to find a therapist?
The first part, I have two parts to this. The first part is to keep looking. Finding a good one is worth it. Even if you try a few and they don't work out, I would say keep looking.
Yeah.
And also, part two is in the meantime, find someone you trust who helps you feel understood and speak to them as whenever you can, whenever is appropriate. Because I never, I really try to encourage people, yes, work toward the thing that is important, but also don't neglect yourself in the meantime.
Let's say therapy is wholly inaccessible for you for whatever reason. Find somebody that you can be vulnerable with. Just someone you can be vulnerable with is a great place to start in doing the work and healing yourself. I love that. I love this. I love our conversation. I love that I can talk to you endlessly and that we could continue recording forever. I tend to go too long on guest episodes, so I will stop us here. And I will say thank you so much for being here and guest starring on the You Make It Happen podcast. I would love to have you on again sometime.
I would love to be back. It's been such a pleasure. Thank you for having me.
Thank you.